Welcome in to another episode of the Casual GM podcast. I am your host, Drew, and joined as always by my co-host, Mike, and our special guest star, our co-host, Matt. Guys, how are you?
Doing fantastic. How about you guys?
Yeah, doing great myself as well. Thanks for having me on once again.
Yeah, you're the only person in the history of our podcast that has co-hosted twice.
Hey, there we go. That's an honor.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, Matt, you, as hopefully everybody in the chat knows, you run a channel in Britain called Roar of the Lions UK. Can you give us a little quick summation about who you guys are?
Yeah, we're 8 people now, also some writers, some mainly people who are on the YouTube channel and Twitch, but we started 3 seasons ago now, 3 full seasons, going into our 3rd draft cycle now. Primarily was a blog to begin with for the first few months, and then really we've become a YouTube and Twitch channel since then, and it's been great. We've had some amazing guest stars over the years and going from strength to strength, so check us out. It's Roar of the Lions UK on YouTube and Twitch.
It's a really solid channel. There's a lot of good guys on there.
Yeah, and you guys, is it a regular cadence, like every Wednesday at 3 or that kind of thing? When's your show?
On the off season, it's Monday at 2:30 Eastern, and then during the season, we have a Thursday show at the same time. Anne and Ryan do a college show on the Wednesday at the same time as well, and then we might do a live stream during a game, but obviously that's a way off now. Yeah. And now that we're in the off season, we're actually pivoting to trying to have guests on the Thursday show. So we're going to have Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit, I think, on next week, which should be really good.
Excellent. Well, a little feedback. Oh, go ahead, Drew.
If you guys want to watch something, just like if you want to just have like the joy that you used to have as a kid watching the Lions play, watch Matt when he streams the game. There's no one out there who is more excited about like, oh, when it's 3rd and 7 and he got 6. You know, it's like he's extremely excited about.
Now it's only 4th and 1.
Yeah, which we know the Lions will go for, so it's fine.
Yeah. Little feedback. If we could get you to shift that time from 2:30 Eastern to say 5 or 5:30 Eastern, just do it in the middle of the night UK time, so we don't have to like spend our working hours.
Oh, I'd love to. I would really. It's a dream of mine to quit my job and just do something like this for a living. There are people over in the UK who do work in the NFL media full time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's very unlikely, but it's possible. There's I think we've got one guy who works full time over here for Pro Football Network. So like it happens, but you know, one day in 10 years time, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I usually will try to catch the recording. If I'm not in a meeting or whatever, I'll pop it on my phone or whatever, and then you'll see me in there and Drew in there. Like, wait a minute, why is Drew in here twice? No, that's me. But it doesn't happen very often. But I'll catch the recordings though.
So at the rate you guys are growing, I mean, they're not going to be able to ignore you that much longer. You'll probably be in NFL media before you know it. So
we'll see. We'll see. We've got
crossed,
a long way to go to become as big as, say, I don't know, Woodward Sports or Pride of Detroit or someone like that, who are obviously massive players in the space. Yeah. Or even Lions Nation Unite, who only started last year and now have 3,500 subs. Like,
are they that recent?
I think so. I think Herman started out about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, they're growing quick.
Yeah.
I mean, we were thrilled when we got our 50th subscriber.
Drew's buying a hat over it.
Yeah.
When you've got Herman's money behind it and you've got organized people like Micro Mike, and the other people behind LNU, it's going to grow just a lot more quickly because they're devoting a lot of time to it, right? And, they're paid to do that sort of thing. So, yeah.
That helps. The time and money really does.
It really does.
Really does help.
Well, I think some of those other sites also. Do you guys do like an actual website with written articles and that kind of stuff as well? Because I know some of those sites also have that part of the media, right?
I mean, it's there, and Ash is one of our guys, and he's done like a preview article for every game. And then when I fancy it, I'll do an article on something. So I did something on before, I think it was either the Hawkinson trade before or after. I think it was after the Hawkinson trade, and whether it was a good idea, and that got quite a lot of clicks because it was a fairly emotive subject, and maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, when it takes my fancy, I mean, the whole reason that the thing started up was because my girlfriend was fed up of me talking about it, so I started writing about it. And then people wanted to get talking about it, and talking about it's a hell of a lot less time than writing about it, to be honest, because although it can be very easy to bang out a quick 3-minute article and that's good, but if you want to get read and have people actually take notes of it, you've got to put out proper, like, lots of content. Whereas although this might be an hour or however long it is, actually it's just much less time and less commitment to do, and it's easier for people to watch and so it's a more effective medium.
Calm down, Mark. We're getting to it, okay? Matt's our friend, and we haven't gotten a chance to talk to him in a minute. But Mark does have a point. Are we going to talk Lions today or no? But like, but speaking of the Detroit Lions, they recently finished up their season with a victory over the Green Bay Packers, which was a lot of fun, pretty great. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today, Matt, was to talk about what your impressions of the Lions season, how it went, basically. I remember watching your preseason stuff, and you guys have a Hopium episode where what would happen if everything went right, kind of a scenario, and like how close did the Lions get to that this season, do you think?
I think everything after the Miami game was pretty much what I was talking about in that episode. I was pretty much leading that Hopium episode of what could go right if everything goes right. And the back half of that season just felt exactly like that, which was so weird. But obviously the first half of it was the total opposite. I think I was the highest guy on our show on preseason predictions with 10-7, which meant I was the only one who's nominally disappointed with the record. But I'm really not. Like, the way I put it when I went into the season was, we could win 3 games. Like, we could definitely win 3 games. Anyone that thinks that you can win 3 games 2 years ago, 3 games last year, and then not win 3 games this year is totally mad. So 3 wins, definitely a possibility. But also, this team is good enough, has the talent it needs, the coaching behind it, and the scheme behind it, and smart people actually running the ship, that we could win 13 games. And I think after 8-2, you say, oh, well, just do that for a whole season. That's 13 games. So, like, I think we saw both sides of that coin. And I am happy with what happened in this season. We got some statement wins. I think that everyone has to acknowledge that progress has been made. I think that the Dan Campbell doubters should be quiet.
Oh, I hope so.
I mean, at the end of the day, he's not going to be for everyone. But if you don't think this team has made progress and it's still on an upward trajectory, I think you're deluded. Yeah. And you know, the other coaching staff just make me believe. And also the coaching staff under the primary coordinators are reasons to believe in this team. So sad that we didn't make the playoffs, but overall it's been a really positive season.
I think Campbell is in the finalist running for Coach of the Year if we had made the playoffs. I think that's the reason why Dabble, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think that's why he made it, is because they actually made the playoffs. The Giants head coach, right? So I think if the Seahawks versus Rams game goes differently, right, and the Rams beat them, and we do what we need to do, and we're in the playoffs, I think Campbell's one of those top 3 guys, and possibly even wins it. I think that not making the playoffs was the thing that just goes, yeah, I can't vote for this guy when there's these other guys that did make the playoffs, and that's a big piece of being a coach, is getting your team there. But I guess, what are your thoughts on Campbell's, snub?
I'm not worried. I don't care. Like, there have been so many really good coaching performances this year. If I have a look at the list, I'm like, they've had great seasons. So, okay, fair enough. I mean, if you have a look at what Shanahan did this year, I mean, everyone knows that. I mean, some people don't believe in him, and I don't get it. But if you have a look at what Shanahan's done in his career, he's clearly one of the best minds in the NFL. And he's done it with 3 different quarterbacks this year. He's done it with a guy, 262 in the draft, and he's coming in at like a world beater in there. The way the offense just flows through him. I mean, it's in a division that people thought would be difficult. The Rams were going to go back to the Super Bowl again. and Seattle were going to be terrible, like how that switched, and Arizona were going to be much better than they were. And Shanahan's a really big part of why the pieces fell that way in the division, and he's just an absolute master. If he doesn't win it, I'll be really shocked. But the Eagles, I mean, I called them winning the NFC in preseason, but they've still gone out there, and Sirianni has beaten his critics. It's really, really impressive how the Eagles are just steamrolling people. And then Daboll, as you mentioned, in New York, I mean, people thought that the Giants would be worse than we were, so I think their achievement is probably bigger than what we have done this year. Genuinely, even I think if we got into the playoffs at 9-8, I don't think Campbell makes it onto the shortlist. And I just don't care. I'm happy with him.
Yeah. I don't think Campbell cares either. He's not an image guy and a look at me, I got an award guy. He's like the anti Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. I wondered how
we have to get Aaron Rodgers digs in when we can.
You got to, right? I mean, he's only in the division so long.
Yep. Possibly for no longer. We'll see how that offseason goes.
Oh, it'd be so great if he retired. I know the Ants on our shows on this thing of, I really want him to stay because it screws the Packers over for longer in terms of cap. Yep. And I get it. I just love the idea of us retiring him. Yeah. And I know that kind of is against what I've just said about not caring about Campbell being in the running for the awards, because that's about, awards, but it's all for show. And Rodgers is kind of like, I want the showy bit of us retiring him. So it's not congruent, but there we go.
Well, there was nothing better than watching him put his arm around Cobb, walking down the tunnel sad after that loss. I mean, that made me smile the whole day.
Sustained you.
But I usually don't take joy in other people's pain, but I'm okay with this one.
Yeah, I have to say, when he broke his collarbone with was that us that did that? I think we broke his collarbone back in 2012 or something like that, 2013. And that was really satisfying. I'm not going to lie.
Look, I don't root for people to get hurt, but it couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, it was a great season. 5-1 in the division. You can't go much better than that. And we should have won the 6th. So
that was the Minnesota loss. It was by like 4 points or something.
We lost by 4. They scored a touchdown with 30 seconds left to play.
Yeah. The blown coverage on KJ Osborne.
It was rough. I was driving.
It's dangerous.
I was driving with my girlfriend in the States. We were driving to... I can't remember. I think we were going to Vegas. I'm pretty sure we were driving to Vegas from LA. And I was loving life on the drive down. I was like, we're just steamrolling them. And then by the time we got there, we'd lost. And I was so angry. So angry. But yeah, there's so many games in there that you can flip. And I need to go back and watch the Patriots game. And I know there's not many people who really, really want to go out there and watch a game where you lose without scoring. But
convincingly lost, yeah.
No, but that's the thing that I want to kind of make sure that I'm right about this on, because it was a really even game. Like a really even game. We had 8 fourth downs. We only converted 2 that we went for. Mm-hmm. There was the strip 6, and otherwise they only threw. Well, they only had 1 offensive touchdown in the game, but scored 29 points because our defense held them to 4 field goals. Like, our defense played really well, and actually our offense got us down the field and just couldn't convert on 3rd and 4th down. But I remember thinking this game, I don't even think we deserve to lose this, but we lost by 29 points. And there's little things like that all the way through. The Seattle game, we got blown away and somehow kept it close. The Philly game was basically the same. But
we only lost by 3 to Philly.
Yeah.
It was like 35-38 or something. That was back when our defense had no idea what it was doing, apparently.
Yeah, it took a while.
When you score 35 points, you should win that game.
What were we, 5th in points in the league?
Yeah,
just
I believe so.
Super, super impressive season. So, and I mean, so this is going to open a can of worms, I think, but with both of you. But I'll say it. Goff has earned another year. I'm not going to commit to him longer than that. But I came into the season thinking that he had 1 more year and then we'd be moving on. And I think he's earned the chance to do it again.
I disagree. But here's what I'll say that I think mirrors what you said is that I don't know that Jared Goff, I don't know that I would phrase it that Jared Goff earned another year. I would say that like the way that things have transpired, whether it's quarterbacks and like the carousel that always happens in the NFL, or like the way that like the draft appears to be shaping up, and like the opinions on those players, and like where Detroit has solidified its draft position. I don't know that like there's a better answer to that question. Like, what would you do? So like if the Lions were picking second, if the Rams pick had gotten up to number 2, and you were like, oh, okay, we're probably going to be able to take the second guy off the board, I think there would be a discussion. But
he's our quarterback due to circumstance.
So I think to that point, Bryce Young is not so good a quarterback for me as I feel right now about it, and I'm open to change because I've got a lot of tape work to do in this offseason. Bryce Young for me is not so good a prospect that I am going to, even if I took Bryce Young, not play Jared Goff this season. If we were picking number 1 overall and Trevor Lawrence is on the board, rush to the podium, take Trevor Lawrence, start in week 1. Sorry, Jared, you've been great for us. We're going to trade you for a second-round pick. Like, that is where we'd be going. But none of the quarterbacks in this class are that level of prospect. A few of them have ceilings as high as Trevor's is, but where they are right now is not as high as where Trevor was coming out. So whatever pick you have, I'm still running with Jared Goff next year in this class. And, I mean, who is going to become available in free agency that's better or via trade that doesn't risk the rebuild long term? Everything right now has been about getting better, getting younger, making sure that this rebuild lasts the next decade. Because there's no reason to boom or bust from here. Do what the Eagles do, where they cycle, they get good for a few years, and they go down and they come back, and they're fully committed to doing that, and it works for them. But we're so young, and our draftees have done so well that we could be set up for a long time. And I don't want to do the sort of Deshaun Watson style trade where it's like, okay, you have to win right now, because we ain't there yet.
So to build up on what you just said, I think that if the Lions were to commit, and I think it's either this year or next year, to a quarterback in the first round. So like the one prospect that I think would warrant the pick at 6 is Will Levis if he were somehow there and had fallen there. And if that doesn't happen and they go any other player, a non-quarterback with the 6th overall pick in this draft, and they don't make a trade for, like, let's say Lamar Jackson or something became available, and like the Lions put in a call to Baltimore to see what it would take. If something like that doesn't transpire and you go into 2024's draft class, then I think you need to make a move, because the way that the roster is shaping up, if they get the best asset that you can have in football, which is a decent quarterback on a rookie contract, this team has one of the largest Super Bowl windows of any team in the NFL, going up until 2030. So, I mean, and I think that I do agree with you that I think that Goff is the quarterback next year, and he may actually get to a point where it's like they're actually just going to let the entire contract get played out. But yeah, and I also I don't think that I would, if I was the GM under any circumstance, extend him. But I think that the way that the rebuild, quote unquote, ends is with the selection of someone who is going to be the quarterback of the future, whomever that might be.
Yeah, and I feel pretty similarly, kind of in between. Like I can definitely see both points of like, yeah, we need to take a quarterback if we can. And hey, Goff's earned another year because his statistics look better than his performance actually was. And I don't know if you saw the recent article on PFF about them explaining what's the disparity between like his 19th, 20th ranked thing and the fact that he was top 5, top 10 in all these categories. And they spelled it out really, really well that their scheme was a big piece of it. Their wide receivers and running backs making big plays was a big piece of those stats, and not as much of his play. So I definitely think that he is not the quarterback of the future, but when those things happen, when you have a good offensive line, when you have wide receivers that can stop and turn around and catch the ball behind them or dive or jump, and you make those plays. I mean, even one of the best plays of this year was when DeAndre Swift took a little dump pass, fell down trying to turn around and catch the ball, got up and ran for a touchdown. Mm. That's a touchdown. That's a 30-yard pass. And that was one of the worst thrown balls of the entire season. But when those things come together, he can be a top 10, top 5 in statistics and help us win. So that's where I'm kind of mixed. Like, if everything comes together, he's fine. But at the same time, basically any quality, decent starting quarterback should be also fine when everything comes together. So I'm definitely open for quarterback at 6, but I don't want to stretch. Like, I don't want to just, let's see if this guy does it. 6 is too important to just guess, right?
To kind of push us in a different direction, Matt, let me ask you this question. Is Ben Johnson on a coach on this team at this point next season?
No.
So
I don't think so.
If you're the Detroit Lions and maybe you win the division or maybe you make the playoffs as a wild card next season, and Ben Johnson has even more hype than he did this year, and he gets a head coaching position somewhere, wouldn't that be a fantastic time? Like, you only take $5 million dead cap hit if you trade or cut Goff, and you're going to bring in a new OC. That's an opportunity to seamlessly transition, right? And that would line up with what you said about getting Goff one more. And I think that's probably where we are, right? They're going to take Goff, and this is the quintessential bridge situation, right? He brought him in. He's probably going to be the starter for 3 years. You're going to rebuild the core, and then you're going to move on to the next phase of the quarterback, right?
I think the thing about Goff is that, and I'll come on to why I think this in a minute, but I think he's done better than the quintessential bridge quarterback. If you have a look at what Carolina tried to do with Teddy or someone of that, I think Teddy is more the quintessential bridge quarterback because he is like the 32nd best quarterback in the NFL every single season he's been active. I think
there's a lot of truth to that.
yeah. He's just good enough to be a starter at the worst team. I don't know where I was going with this. Where am I going with this? So Jared Goff, I think the thing that's being lost in all of the smoke, and PFF had some good points for sure. And I think you guys know that I'm probably the most pro PFF person on our show.
Oh yeah,
which is probably an anti PFF show, I would say, on the whole. I think that they were missing a lot of nuance in what they were arguing as well. I want to get away from the statistics and away from what they were saying about the mitigating factors. You have a look at San Francisco over the last few years and how that is quarterback friendly in a very similar way to this is quarterback friendly, which is why the comparisons between Jimmy Garoppolo and Jared Goff persist. They're not that dissimilar quarterbacks. I actually think that Goff probably has a better arm. And I think this season he showed that he was potentially a better game manager. The thing that was always the problem with Jimmy is that he was pretty accurate until he just decided to fall off a cliff and be really terrible and throw picks in really key spots. Goff was, I hate the clutch element of this, but in big moments this year and last year at the end of it, he stood up when it counted. When it comes to the optics of how he's operating, Goff was always bad at recognition, at changing things at the line. That wasn't his game coming out of college, and he wasn't very good at it at the start of his NFL tenure. But he's become much more mature at that, changing things at the line. He's stepping up into the pocket to make his throws. He's actually taking off a bit when he can, running-wise, which adds another string to his bow. He's not the fastest guy, but he's as fast as Daniel Jones. In terms of the 40 time he is anyway. He's got the same 40-yard dash time as Daniel Jones. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but
have you seen both of them run? That would be my counter to that.
I think I would argue that they both look just as awkward when they run.
Really?
Well, Daniel Jones does not look good when he's running. He might run well.
He's effective, though.
He doesn't look good.
I mean, I think if we looked at like rushing totals between Daniel Jones this year and what Jared Goff has done in his career, I think Daniel Jones would have 5 times the number of rushing yards.
I'm not trying to argue that they're similar, similar runners. What I'm trying to say is that I think Goff could do more of that. I think there's something there where we've seen him have space, and actually he's done a little bit more of that this year.
And you feel he's capable of it?
Yeah, I do. I think so. He's smart when he slides, when he actually does it. He doesn't take unnecessary hits. He takes what he can, and then he exits. I don't think it's risking his longevity as a quarterback. He actually got a couple of late hits this year. He drew penalties, if you remember, for unnecessary roughness down the stretch, which really helped us out. When it comes to accuracy of his passes, you mentioned one of the worst ones that he had this year. But actually, generally speaking, I think he's become a lot more accurate, and not just with caught versus not caught balls, but caught balls and very accurate caught balls. So I'm thinking about the long throw touchdown to DJ Chark, and I can't remember who that was against, but it was
Bears. That was a beauty. I mean, that was
an
one of the best.
Peach.
It was like the polar opposite of the touchdown pass to JMO, where he had to stop and turn around and wait. I think specifically with the JMO one, he wanted to make sure he wasn't overthrowing. Right? Hey, I don't want to screw this up. I don't need to. Right?
He knew he had 10 yards of separation, and he was like, the most important thing is not that I hit him in stride, but that he can go and get it, and he just looped it. But then part of that is what I'm talking about. He has become much better at knowing his situation and playing to it. Now, I'm saying he's grown as a game manager, and I know people like to beat people to the stick with this. Being a game manager or being good at game managing is the most important quarterback feature. Because if the rest of your team can win you the game and you manage the game properly, you win games. And actually, that's what Jalen Hurts has got much better at this year, is managing his games. That's not what Josh Allen is good at. And that's why the Bills are not in the rest of this playoffs. Because you know what? They can scheme everything up all they want. And Allen can be my favorite quarterback in the league, which he very much is, because he's a spectacular player. But you got to learn to win. And sometimes that means not taking the flashy plays, but making the smart plays. And Goff has become much better at that. And sometimes that means taking the checks down when they're there and taking the scheme-friendly things that happen. But he's making it work. And he's hitting the guys in stride now, whereas sometimes they'd be on target but slightly behind, which kills the momentum of the play. The reason that the yak was so high this year is because the ball placement was much better than it has been. He hasn't been slowing things down, which he was doing in the past. So the yak is high and it's scheme friendly. I get it, but he's still operating better within that structure than he was doing in the past, changing the protections, walking up in the pocket instead of trying to spin away. And also, he avoided quite a lot of sacks in the pocket with a quick little Brady-like shuffle. He's kind of invented from nowhere. He never used to do that. And suddenly,
the last 10 games, right?
Got out of maybe 4 or 5 sacks in those 10 games with just one step side shuffle. But it's very Tom Brady-like, and I love it. I'm here for it. So I'm not going to sacrifice value in this draft when he's probably going to be better than any rookie guy next year, even if it's Bryce Young. Goff probably operates that offense.
I'll give him props. His last 10 games were significantly better than the first 7. And I think if his first 7 he played as well as the last 10, we would have been in the playoffs, no problem. But that's my concern. The good news is, like, I recognized he changed things. He stepped in the pocket. He took a lot of sacks because he was afraid to step up in the pocket or didn't step up in the pocket. The first 7 games, he recognized that. The coaches recognized that. He got stepping up. He avoided those sacks that he would have taken earlier in the season. So I recognize that he is making changes in his game. And I think the biggest piece to that is our coaching, and kind of recognizing that and getting him to do that, but also changing the playbook a bit. If you notice the first 7 games, he was terrible at the 20+ yard downfield passes, off stride, off target, behind whatever. It was just not good. And I think one of the things that made this season successful was Ben Johnson recognized that limitation and dialed it back. Not that we had none. The Chark one is a great example. And even I guess the JMO one was also a good example of like you hit some of those long ones when you can, but they dialed that back to most of his passes are in that 5 to 15 yard range where he is very accurate. Right. So I think they looked at what his specialty is, adjusted for him. And I think that was the Ben Johnson special, was adjusting for his specialty and taking away the thing that he's not as good at. So that's my only fear is if Ben Johnson leaves and the next guy comes in, they're like, yeah, you got the arm. And he does. He can throw the ball a mile, just not accurately.
Who can throw the ball a mile?
Goff.
Jared Goff?
He can throw the ball a long way.
I have been quiet until this point, and so I am not going to be quiet anymore. He cannot throw the ball a mile. That is ridiculous. The pass to Chark was a good one, and it covered about 45 yards. And if you look at the last one that he had like second to last of the year, who was it that was wide open? And he rolls out to his left.
Khalif Raymond.
Yeah, he puts his whole body into it, and it goes 45 yards. Like that's fine. Like if you want to call Jared Goff
But he puts his whole body into it because he's running perpendicular to where he wants the ball to go.
He stopped and set his feet, and then he put his whole body into it, and he went 45 yards. Like I'll give him that he can hit the short and intermediate stuff, and I'll even concede that like it's more accurate. But like, let's not joke. This dude does not have a big arm. He is not a deep ball thrower.
You would not call him a gunslinger.
Correct.
But I think some of his throws this year have proven that he doesn't have a noodle arm. In fact, I think that what people thought of him when he said noodle arm is that sometimes he gets the yips. Like early on in games, he can underthrow people a lot because he's just got the yips a bit, and then he flows into the game, and then he's fine. I don't think that's anything to do with his arm strength. It's just feeling his way into the game. But I don't think you can probably throw a ball 70 yards in the air. But how often do you need to throw the ball 70 yards in the air? Part of the reason why he threw everything into the Raymond throw is he saw the window closing, and it was a 45-yard throw, and he made it a bullet. Mm-hmm. I mean, he threw it hard to stop the window closing. So I don't think that was to do with distance. I think that was he thought he needed speed.
I don't need him to throw the ball 70 yards, but I need him to hit Jameson Williams when he has 3 steps on DJ Reed. That cannot, if you are going to invest like Brad Holmes has in guys like DJ Chark and Jameson Williams who have speed, and you're going to send them on those kinds of routes, then you have to be able to hit them. And so I understand that they're not all going to get hit, but if that's not Jared Goff's game, then make DJ Chark and Jameson Williams run deep crosses or slants or something so they can use their speed in a different way. But you cannot invest in those kinds of players with that kind of speed and then not be able to effectively utilize it because your quarterback is incapable of throwing the ball 50 yards down the field.
I think that the JMO issues wasn't really to do with Goff himself, but just Goff and JMO together. And I think they were. I think it was a off. So the proof will be in the pudding in this coming season. Goff will likely be the starter. JMO will have a full off season. They're probably training together in the next few months already, because we know what Goff did last year, and he'll probably do the same this year because there'll be upheaval after the draft. Right. And if they can't get on the same page, then I buy your argument, and we need to get rid of Goff to make the most of what we're doing here. But he's a West Coast guy, and he runs the West Coast offense. He does. That's what we do right now. But when you ask him to throw the ball downfield as a misdirect, he can do that too. And we saw a few instances of him being able to do that. I know that the big time throw rate per PFF for him was low, but if the offense doesn't call for him to do it, of course it's going to be low. And if you can get the 5th best offense in the league not doing that, and therefore not putting the ball in harm's way, and so the turnover rate is low, then why would you put the ball in harm's way and throw it deep? you have to take what defenses are giving you. And our scheme was so good that we just didn't have to push it. I do worry about Goff and whether we have to push it or not next year, because I think people will wake up to Ben Johnson. But for now, Goff is probably the best guy in the NFL for this offense. Like, this sort of West Coast scheme that doesn't call on you to do too much with arm talent, but instead calls you to use your head, take the smart throw, pick your matchups well, and be the leader of the team. Mm-hmm. He's done terrifically for that. And I think that is a point against him and a point for him all at the same time.
So, all right, let's we could probably discuss this for
forever,
multiple hours. But let's move in.
Is always one of the most polarizing positions in sports, right?
Yeah. So go off the quarterback next year. What do you see this team doing potentially in the offseason leading up to the draft?
Free agency wise?
Yeah, anything. I mean, like, I would imagine like they're probably going to hold true to what they've done in the past, where they'll re-sign players and maybe sign one relatively significant guy. But do you think that this year being the first year that they have some kind of legitimate cap space, they will deviate from that plan in any way?
I really don't. I really don't think the Lions are going to make any splashy signings. And actually, honestly, some of the people being thrown around, I don't think will want to come here. I just have a feeling. But also, I was thinking of interior defensive line specifically, and I saw someone speak on Jerome Payne already in the chat. I don't want him. I really don't want him.
Are you going to be able to outbid Chicago for him anyways? I mean...
Well, maybe, but like, there is a reason that interior defensive linemen typically don't get picked early on in the draft unless they're a special talent. And it's because it's a low-value position. Now you're telling me you want to spend $10 to $14 million a year on that position. Let's go draft. Let's just go draft that guy. Let's go and spend the money on a more important position. So other people saying, let's get a free agent corner or trade for a corner. I'm much more on board with that idea because it's a position of need. And it's a very, very important position for the defense. Now, that alludes to someone else also that I don't want. But I like the idea of it.
Don't say it.
Do you want to go and talk about that?
Do it.
Jalen Ramsey.
Oh, we're so different on this.
So I think that Jalen Ramsey is still the best cornerback in the NFL. Okay. I do think that. I do not think that people think he's available for the amount that they think he's available for.
Probably
a first-round pick is not getting it done. Sorry, guys, but like, he's the best cornerback in the NFL. Do you think they're going to sell themselves short for no reason at all? Like, he's worth pretty much what they paid for him, which is 2 first-round picks, I think. And, I mean, does he want to come here or not? That does feed into it a little bit for me. I'm not too worried about that question. He's got on in age. I'm not saying he's old, but
28.
I think, so I think maybe you get one contract out of him.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Because I think with his skill set, he relies very much on speed as well as instinct. And I think when that speed goes, I think he will drop off significantly in his early 30s. And I just don't want to trade a first-round pick at the very least to give some people some credit out there for the trades they're throwing out there, to 2 first-round picks for a guy that I'm not sure makes it to the end of a 5-year contract. It's just not smart football.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to trade the 6 overall pick, but I would be definitely open to the 18. And if they needed a second, I mean, I would almost be, looking at what our picks are this year, what if everything goes well, what they would be next year, right? If we were to get him and still have number 6. So if I traded 18, I would actually be okay with trading 18 and next year's first, just because I think next year's first is going to be 20 to 32, right? And again, Drew and I talked a little bit about sometimes you got to space out some of the people that you're drafting because of the whole re-signing thing. And you're going to have to do extensions and that kind of stuff. So it also gives us a little bit of room there where we're not dealing with a fifth year or, a contract extension or whatever, especially if we keep hitting on people, which we want to. I would go 18 in next year's first for a guy like Ramsey.
So what I would say with that deal, and I think that is probably a heck of a lot closer to the value they're going to look for than what people were saying with just 18. I think that's mad. I think 6 might be closer, but I still don't think they'd accept 6.
If they were offered 6, they would take it. There's no doubt in my mind.
I think they'd laugh in your face.
Oh my
say,
God!
Really? They'd say, come back again with a real offer. Do you think that Detroit would be the only team in for Jalen Ramsey?
No, absolutely not. No.
Do you think the Eagles might be interested in Jalen Ramsey?
Sure. Why wouldn't they be?
Do you think that he'd probably prefer to go there?
I don't know. That's the question. I don't know how to answer. I don't know Jalen Ramsey.
But I just think the thing about Ramsey that's going to make his value so high is his production is still so good year on year, and there are plenty of teams out there that have draft capital that are going to want him because they are in their window. And
they also need to have cap room too.
Yeah, but I think you guys know very well that cap can be massaged somewhat. I mean, Ramsey's going to look for a new deal. Year 1, therefore, will be cheap.
Yeah.
So I think the Eagles, especially as Bradbury looks like he's going to be on their way out, they'll be looking for a new corner, and everyone thinks they're going to go corner in the draft, but they could just trade the pick for Ramsey and do what the Rams have done all these years in trading picks for players. I mean, why not? The Eagles could properly open up this window. And the problem with going 18 and next year's first is what does Detroit do at quarterback in 2024?
Well, so I mean, like
we draft a quarterback this year at 6.
Well, that's okay.
Oh, there we go.
That doesn't have to be a quarterback that starts this year, right? I mean, it could be a Will Levis that's going to sit there, or an Anthony Richardson that's going to sit there behind Jared Goff for a year or even 2 years, depending. Because I think we actually have 2 years on Goff's contract, right?
Yeah.
The second one is just cap free if we want to get rid of him or something. So like
$5 million.
Yeah, so basically cap free compared to like his normal salary, right? But yeah, I mean, you could do a Levis or a Anthony Richardson, let him sit there, do the Mahomes thing, right? Alex Smith had a good year. He made the Pro Bowl the year they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Like that didn't work out too bad for them. Like to have someone there. I'll be curious to see how Jordan Love goes. Partially feel that the amount of time that Love's been sitting on the bench has kind of ruined that for them. But sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, probably, and then stepping in, I think probably would have been fine for Love. But I don't know. That's my thought. If it all depends on what happens in free agency, right? If we sign some other cornerback in free agency, maybe this isn't a thing. But like, I'd be fine with a quarterback at 6.
If I draft a quarterback at 6, I'm trading Goff, and that quarterback starts. Yeah. Like, I've never, ever been a fan of sitting a quarterback. Like, the way that quarterbacks learn is by taking reps, and practice reps don't count. They really don't. And you see these guys who aren't ready year 1, and most of the time when they go in year 2, they ain't ready. Like, that year did them no good. Maybe the training for a few more hours a day every day helps, because I know that in college you really don't get much time at all. And I think that goes under the radar, especially for guys over here. Like, college players barely practice, as far as I'm aware, compared to the NFL players. So, those reps in practice, fine. Maybe that helps a little bit. But how well did the San Francisco quarterback do this year before he got injured? Like, he looked terrible. The name escapes me, from NDSU last year. Trey Lance. Looked awful. And I mean, people were talking about trying to trade for him for a second-round pick, and he was 2 1s. Like, sorry, he was 3 1s. They traded 2 1s and they used a 1. So he was 3 1s. Mm. These guys that you want to sit a year, you sit them a year by saying, I'm tanking the season by starting you, but it's more important that you get starter reps. That's my philosophy. And I think Levis would definitely start year 1. And I think Richardson, I would ease him in, maybe. I think Richardson is in play at 6. I do. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I can't wait.
So let's move to the draft a little bit, but before that, I want to wrap up because some of this Jalen Ramsey talk just real quick because the chat's been talking about it a little bit. Cornerback on the Detroit Lions was a gaping hole that either directly lost us games last year because of either injury or incompetence or coaching or whatever it was, or just having it be a lack of talent. And it's by far the biggest need on this team heading into the offseason, in my opinion. Jalen Ramsey is a super talented cornerback. And like, even if it was you're going into next season with something like Jalen Ramsey, Okudah, Jacobs in the slot, you're still going to need to draft cornerbacks because the only other guy they have on the roster is Chase Lucas. So you need depth at least, and it's a lot of depth. But like, I think about the kind of games, like, so someone I think in the chat, like, how many games does Jalen Ramsey like win you? That's a move for a Super Bowl contender, not the Detroit Lions. I go back and I think about the Philly game, or I go back and I think about the Minnesota game where like blown coverages were huge problems in those games that led to the deficit that we lost by. And I think if you add Jalen Ramsey, an experienced player who let's say he's not the best quarterback in the NFL. Let's say he's a top 5 cornerback in the NFL next season, or a top 10 cornerback in the NFL. That's so much hot. That's raising your cornerback room's level of play by so much compared to what it was this season, that even if you went something like what I've been doing in mocks is taking Devin Witherspoon at 6 and still trading for Jalen Ramsey if the cost is the 18th pick or like a future 2nd or a future 3rd or something like that, and just going like, okay, we're gonna throw resources at the secondary this year and we're gonna go in even if it means we're not going to get a defensive tackle until like round 4 or 5, just because you have, like, I think the line showed this year that they can be good. And like, if you carry that into next year and you improve the secondary play, okay, now the line has an extra half second or a second of being able to get to the quarterback. That'll be helpful. And if it's the other way around, now you have guys, Jalen Ramsey, who, you know, can make plays in the secondary. And like, we just didn't have anyone other than Kirby who could make a play in the secondary that mattered. And so like, the Lions are like, what's the best use of the Lions resources in the offseason to make this team better? And I have a hard time believing that trading for Jalen Ramsey wouldn't be at least near the top of that list of like what we could do to make the team better. Like, and that's not directed at Matt, that's more directed at the chat. But like, but like, if they trade for him, like I've on our podcast with Mike, I've said time and time again, like, it's talent acquisition that's going to be the thing that this team needs to do to compete, and like, not compete to like slip into the playoffs on a tiebreaker, like compete to be like, well, we're this time next year, we're talking about them going into maybe the NFC title game. Like, that's the kind of competing I want to do. And like, players like Jalen Ramsey, those are the players that help you get there. And like, trying to project a kid, I mean, if you go into next season with like Devin Witherspoon and Jeff Okudah as your outside corners, cool. But like, you're starting a rookie corner. God, I hope he plays well. You know, like, you don't know that he will his rookie season. So, but like, if you don't show as a team, if you don't show continued improvement, and we're not talking about leapfrogging here where you're going to make improvement one year, stall out, and then make improvement the next year, you'll get the same kind of chatter that Lions fans have had in the past. You'll have the same kind of questions about like, where's the team headed in the past and that kind of stuff. And Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are going to have to like consistently prove themselves time and time again. And I don't want them to have to do that. I want them to be able to be like, we made the move. It's a bold move. We're moving forward. We're acquiring good talent. And then we're also going to go into the draft. We have an extra first round pick this year. It gives you a lot of leverage. And I know you and I were talking, Matt, on Discord, and you said that you hadn't started your draft prep yet. So I think this is a good time to ask, like, what are your initial impressions about, like, this is where I think that probably a direction the Lions should move in. Are there any kind of like prospect crushes that you have prior to diving into the film, or players you'd like to see end up on the Lions?
I'm still very early on in the process. I actually started building my first consensus big board yesterday, which is, I think, 302 players long. And it takes it from PFN, TDN, Tankathon, PFF, and Dane Brugler from the Athletics. So I've got a long list of people to watch.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of names. I think it's a good class overall so far from what I've seen. I think that it is probably stronger overall than last year's, maybe not quite as strong as the year before. In terms of draft crushes, or not draft crushes, I hate the O-line prospects. I really don't like any of the O-line prospects so far. So I've seen some chat about, if Paris Johnson drops to 9, I'll eat my hat already. And it's like, really? Because consensus-wise, he's 11. So
yeah, I have him going to Tennessee at 11, yeah.
So there we go. I don't like the quarterbacks overall.
I mean, they're certainly not. I don't think that they're the kind of guys that you're like, oh, this is a can't miss prospect. But even like Josh Allen, like Mahomes drafts, or like, I know they weren't the same draft, but like those guys were not like, these are for sure prospects. And
oh yeah,
or whatever. Joe Burrow was taken at 1, but like he was only coming off of one decent year at LSU where he just happened to have the best collegiate season any quarterback's ever had in college in the history of college football.
Yeah, but, just one reasonably good season.
One of those years, or whatever. But like it was still just 1 year. I mean, like, some of these times, like, I mean, I don't know that we really have any idea what it means to have a quarterback be able to come into the NFL and play well in the first year or two that he's in the NFL. It seems to be very hit or miss.
I think so. Like I say, my opinions will change as we go through the process. So do not take receipts and then bring them back to me and say, this isn't what you said at the start of the offseason, because it's going to change dramatically. I think that I'm going to go in with my QB1 being Anthony Richardson.
Really?
Yeah, and it's based on ceiling. It's not based on where they are now, but I just think that all of them, on average, probably don't make average NFL QB. Like the odds say that only 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 make it, and it's not a good QB class. So I just think that maybe 1 or 2 of these guys actually makes it as a good level starter. And if you have a look at what happens if you really hit on one of these guys, how good can they be? I think Richardson is the one that has the best tools, and slightly younger than Levis, which is one of the things I kind of like. But Levis is probably up there then with Bryce for me. Bryce is going to be the best year 1 starter for sure.
Yeah.
Like no sweat about calling that at all. Stroud will be fine. Stroud will have a solid low NFL career. He'll be like the 24th best starter every year, and that'll be fine. But he'll cry when he loses, and that's fine. Not a Stroud fan. But in the defensive line, I quite like a lot of the guys in there. I need to watch a bit more Brazil because I've heard a few more people kind of be detractors on him recently, so we'll see what happens with that. But I'd be happy with Will Anderson, Murphy, Carter. Those guys at the top are all premier prospects for me.
So let me ask you this then.
And Tyree as well.
Oh, sure. Okay. So let's talk about, like Carter, Anderson, let's take them off the table. Those are the elite defensive prospects here in the class.
Really think that one of them could fall to 6.
I'm having a hard time believing it, but if one of them do, I'm taking that player. It doesn't matter which one of them it is. So, but let's say they're, just for the sake of the conversation, let's say that they're not there. Murphy, Wilson is defensive end, and I know that they're flexible defensive ends, but like another defensive end with the emergence of Houston, not saying that you have James Houston, you can't take one of these guys, but like, is that position group any less of a need to the point where you look at something else like cornerback working its way into the mix?
Cornerback is the more important need. there is no doubt that cornerback is a much, much bigger need. We have a lot of names at edge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know that I have a jersey for...
yeah, I do know that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Aquara.
Romeo, he's my guy. But he's going into the final year of his contract coming up. Or am I imagining that? I might be imagining that.
I think he's got one more year.
So he's got 2023, and then there's a void year on for 2024. So he's only got 2023. So if you have I'm trying to predict the needs for 2024 and meet them today and let the team grow into it. That I always want to be like 1 year ahead of where I need to be, because that's how you look after the team best, right? So Aquara is likely not coming back after 2023. Now, whether he's here for 2023 is up for debate. He is a candidate. But assuming he stays, he's probably gone at the end of that process unless he has a really, really good year. And given the injury he had, that's unlikely. So he's probably gone. Houston is unlikely to be a 3-down player in the NFL.
Sure.
He had 140 snaps last year, and most, if not all of them, were pass rush snaps. He did get a few second down snaps, first down snaps towards the end of the year, but I just don't think it's going to be his bag. You need a guy out there on first and second down. Pascal could be that guy. He was fine. He showed up in some spots, but he was iffy. He was still a rookie, and he had some injuries, so we'll see on that. But I wasn't big on him coming out. And he's a very, very good defensive prospect. I'd like to see Pascal bulk up and move to the interior. I do think he needs to put on some weight to do that. And I don't know if he's got the frame to do it, but I would like to see him try.
Mm-hmm.
And now suddenly I'm looking pretty thin on that edge. Charles Harris is not going to be re-signed. Does he stick around? I think probably, but I'm not sure. He could be cut as well. Now who do we have at edge? Like, it all seems great and rosy for 2023 if we keep some people around. But then you look at the logic of all of those players and what happens to them for 2024. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we do need another guy.
Well,
and
I guess my argument would be we didn't have Aquara or Harris this year.
True. And we did well with Kaminsky being an absolute beast for this season. He was very, very good. But, I mean, the guy didn't cut it at Atlanta. Like, is it a flash in the pan for Kaminsky? I don't know. But I'd like to say that the years he has in his career prior to the season are still an indicator of who he is as a player. I'm not going to bank on him being a general for this team for the next 8-9 years. I'm just not.
No,
so
neither would I.
I think at the end of the day, at 6, it's best player available, and that is likely to be defensive line or cornerback anyway, and that aligns with where I think we could do with some infusion of talent is how I'll put it. I mean, do you guys think that we can roll into this season with the interior of the defensive line as it is?
I mean, if we needed to, if there wasn't the talent at the spots that we're drafting, I think it would probably be fine.
So my thinking is that if, let's say, the draft goes something like quarterback at 1, quarterback at 2, and then let's say it's Chicago and Arizona picking 3 and 4, I wouldn't be surprised if both Anderson and Carter are off the board. And like to mirror what you said a little bit earlier, I'm not certain Brzee is the talent that warrants the 6th overall pick. Even though I do think that like a tag team partner for Lee McNeil is probably more important than, say, a dedicated defensive end. I do think the defensive end prospects at 6 are better. Also, I think that after Brzee, defensive tackle quality in this draft falls off a cliff. And I mean, you can draft a guy to take up a spot, but if that player is better than John Kaminsky next season, I'd be really surprised. So to me, it's like, okay, so I guess the question that I ask myself when I'm sitting there at 6 and like doing my mock drafts and Brzee and someone like Wilson from Texas Tech's on the board, or like Christian Gonzalez from Oregon or whatever, is like, where am I going to be able to find the next version of any one of these players in this draft? And it continually gets me drafting defensive tackle at 6 because at 18, there could be a Brian Branch or a Devin Witherspoon or a Joey Porter. And then in the second round, you still could see a guy like Andre Carter or, the kid from K-State, which I can't pronounce his name. But, like, I do think that if you're stuck and
Felix
you're saying...
Andui Uzoma?
That's him, yeah.
That's it.
Now, he would fit right in on Detroit because we got some real cool names on this roster. So, but, like, I think that you re-sign Buggs. I think you re-sign Kaminsky, and that's at least your depth.
Jones as well?
Benito Jones?
Yep.
I would rather have the two guys I said before him. But, like, I wouldn't be surprised, especially given, like, Brad Holmes's and, like, Dan Campbell's, like, philosophy on, like, these are our guys kind of thing. I could very easily see them retaining a lot of the depth that was on this team. A, because they were here. B, because they're probably cheap. C, because they're our guys or whatever. And then, like, supplementing it through maybe a free agency signing, probably through the draft. But I think there's a lot more holes to fill than I think people give him credit for. And I think I'm really interested to see how Brad Holmes is going to juggle this class.
Matt, I guess my question is, which position groups do you feel are I guess, pick the top 3 positions of need and the top 3 positions that we got it all set. It's, the most important, least important.
Most important has to be corner for us to draft, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, I just want to stick defensive line at 2. I don't really care between tackle and edge. Okay. What's his number 3? Probably linebacker, inside linebacker. As much as Anzalone came on down the stretch and was actually a bit of a underrated force to be reckoned with in there. He made some clutch plays, but we could do with strengthening that. Having Anzalone as a rotational piece coming off the bench would be really exciting for me because I think he's proven that he can do it, especially in this system, but having someone better than him on the field would be great. Least important, offensive line generally, obviously right guard could be upgraded, or just have someone in there generally would be nice. But the offensive line is pretty well set.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I stop. Everywhere else could be upgraded. I love another wide receiver. I don't care for tight end. I don't think it's a big need. But tight end goes up there. I don't want a tight end. If Darnell Washington came, I'd be very excited.
He is my number 1 prospect crush. I love him so much. He's like having an extra offensive lineman out there all the time. I'm so excited what Ben Johnson would be, even for 1 year, what he would do with a Darnell
just
Washington.
Because of what he's able to do with Penei Sewell or what Deck has done in the past in the receiving end, you put Washington's hands in there, it'd be really exciting.
Oh, man.
But a tight end generally isn't a need. You look at what this tight end room did this year after Hockenson went, and it was very effective.
Way better than what TJ Hockenson did. Yeah.
It was better at blocking, and in terms of receiving when it mattered, it also was very good too. I mean, that Brock Wright touchdown, does that happen with Hockenson? Maybe. He did have some big plays early on in the season, but I don't know. Brock Wright is one of those guys that could turn into one of those top guys when it comes down to it. His ceiling is so high and people sleep on him, but very fast, just hasn't had the reps in his career. So let's see what happens with him.
His floor seems to be mediocre.
Sorry?
Right. Yeah, his floor seems to be mediocre. Like the worst he's going to be is a mediocre tight end. And I'm good with it. At least he's not like the worst he could be is a bad tight end. He's at least mediocre, and his ceiling could be really damn good.
Yeah, really damn good. I mean, every single position on this team could get upgraded. It really could. The team overall is pretty solid. Like, where we are right now was great. We were a top 7 team in the NFL in the final 8 games of the year per by DVOA.
Yeah.
And so we're good, but like running back would be great. We could really do with a running back.
Do you not think that they will re-sign Jamal Williams?
I think that they're going to battle very hard to re-sign Jamal. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what offers he gets.
So let me ask you this, because I think there's two. Now that you said that, I think there's 2 guys on the roster that might have played themselves into bigger contracts than the Lions are willing to dish out, and that's Chark and it's Williams.
I think people will revolt if you suggest Chark. I really do. Revolt. I really like Chark, but
well, I mean, okay. So let me. This is what I'm saying is that, like, if they retain Chark, you're heading into next season with the wide receiver core looking something like just 5 deep is something like Williams, St. Brown, Chark, Raymond, and Josh Reynolds. So are you saying that you want to, where you would upgrade if you wanted another wide receiver is like over Quentin Cephas?
Yeah, I don't think Cephas makes the roster even as it stands. I think he'll probably not make the 53. It's a shame for him. He just hasn't stayed healthy, and he's been a good receiver when he's been on the field, but Khalif has been so good, and I think that's his spot. So I think it's sad for Quintez, but he'll catch on somewhere else. I'd love to see another wide receiver on this team. I really would, and get an extra one who's better than Quintez and actually forces their way to expanding the wide receiver room rather than saying there's 5 or 6 guys. And I think there's a depth in this class to do it.
Oh, yeah, I agree. So let me ask you this about that quote-unquote 6th wide receiver. Is there a different skill set that you would want to see them add compared to what they already have on the team? Because I would classify St. Brown as a chain mover. I would classify Williams as a speed guy. Do you need like a 6'5", 210-pound jump ball, contested catch point kind of guy, or do you?
That was supposed to be one of Chark's things, was some of the contested catch stuff. Not that we used him that way.
I don't think he's very good at that either. I don't rate him as a contested catch guy. I think he's very good as a separation deep ball threat. I mean, him and JMO have quite a lot of crossover, which makes me doubt that Chark is coming back. Even though I want Chark, and even if we re-sign Chark, he isn't a typical X receiver. He looks like the typical X receiver, but he isn't. He's a Z with a very big frame. Yeah. So a Quentin Johnson would obviously be great, but I just don't think we're going to go that way. There's people way down there in like the 5th, 6th rounds that I've kind of seen bits and pieces of that I think that could be like a.
Give me a name. You got a name?
Let me.
There's one guy. There's one guy that I'm betting you'll say, but you tend to surprise me, so I'm kind of curious.
I know that the Ant is really high on Puka Nakua or whatever his name is. I can't say his name.
He'd fit right in on the roster.
Is that the one that you would say? No.
Name worthy, right?
Yeah, he's certainly name worthy of this roster.
I haven't got the guy's name who I was looking for.
Do you know what school he plays for?
No. Let me load up.
Not everybody knows the entirety of college football.
Is it
a playoff players?
Is it A.T. Perry?
No, it wasn't A.T.
Oh, it's not A.T. Perry. Okay, that was my guess.
That was your guy.
Yeah, or my guess that you would say. Yeah.
Oh, what do you think? Who would you take then? If it had to be a wide receiver in that sort of mold.
In that sort of mold,
or just your guy, a wide receiver.
So I'm going to say a guy, but it's not a contested catch guy.
Okay.
My guy that if I so later rounds, if I had to take a guy, the guy that I am taking is Charlie Jones from Purdue.
Okay.
First of all, I think the idea, Calvin Johnson played for the Detroit Lions. Calvin Johnson is a hero in this town. Calvin Johnson is maybe one of the greatest wide receivers that's ever played in the NFL. I don't know that you need a Calvin Johnson in this version of the NFL. So I would rather have a guy like Charlie Jones who is just an really good route runner, gets open, like a different, maybe a little bit faster version of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love those kinds of wide receivers. And like, to be honest, if Jared Goff is going to be on this roster next season, potentially a season after that, who knows what the situation will be, I would rather have him with guys that can get open than anybody else.
The Cooper Kupps and Amon-Ra's.
100% that type of wide receiver.
They are the ones that do it. So the guy that I was speaking of, and he's not really as ex-receiver either, but Zachary Franklin from the UTSA was the one that I was high on early on in the process.
Okay. UTSA's got a bunch of guys this year that might get drafted. They're really building something there. I like it.
Yeah, they do. Puka is the guy that Ant was on, about 6'2", 210. Draft Network are very high on him as a guy.
Sure.
We'll see what happens. BYU. So I don't know. The draft's a weird beast, isn't it? That I wouldn't be angry with pretty much any direction the Lions go in. If we take quarterback at 6, I'm here for it. If we go cornerback, edge, if we trade the pick, I don't care. I trust pretty much 100% where we're going right now. So
Bijan Robinson at 6. I've heard so many. I want to get Matt's take. I know your take, but like I've heard so many people like, oh, we need to, Swift is always hurt. He's almost at the end of his contract. Bijan Robinson is a game changer. We need to take him at 6. And I'm just like, maybe at 18, but more likely for me, that's a second round type of position, even though he's special. What's your take on a guy like Bijan Robinson at 6 or first round in general?
Not at 6. I will think about it long and hard at 18. I do subscribe to that theory on Swift. I really do. He's proven over his career that he can't be relied upon. And that's not a knock on him as a person, just production on the field, availability. Like, it's difficult to put your stock in him when he can't see the field and when his coaches have called him out repeatedly for not playing through injuries that perhaps they feel like he could. So I still believe in his talent. He could be a top 10 running back in this league, but he can't the way he's doing it right now. And we can't roll into 2024 with Jamal on his own. And Jamal is not a lead back. And he took 3/4 of or 2/3 of the handoffs this year. So he did a very good job of doing that in a pinch. But the run game, it's funny that the Lions started winning when they stopped running the ball well. Like the Lions' run game in the last 8 games was awful, like really bad. And actually, it will be a cause for concern in the offseason that happens. I think that we do need another running back. But I am very much on the Bijan Robinson or day 3 pick. I don't want anyone on day 2. I don't want it. It's not a worthwhile pick because I don't think any of those guys are going to change the game the way that Bijan might for us. But I think there's so much depth in the class that a day 3 guy might do enough from that position to bolster your room. I don't like the idea of taking the mediocre guy. Like take the guy with upside late where you're not investing too much, or put your chips in the middle and say, I believe in you. But it's like taking a quarterback in round 2. I don't believe in you enough, but I kind of like you. Like no one wants to be that guy. And I think running backs are the same.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Lions are heading into this next season with only Swift and Greg Bell under contract. So regardless, they are going to have to do something to flesh that room out a little bit, right? Whether it is a draft pick or a re-signing or what have you. So I just think that it's hard to get away from the fact that Williams was like a leader and an emotional leader on this team. I think their Lions are going to value that pretty highly. And I don't know that some team's going to come out there and say, we're going to offer you a contract that's so much higher than what Detroit would be willing to do that he would leave. Plus, I think that I can't believe I'm saying this. I think that he wants to be here. Like, which is so weird to say because for my entire life it's been like, oh, we can't wait to get on my second contract with some team that's not in the Detroit, Michigan. So
it is crazy,
yeah. So like, I agree though with what your assessment was, Matt. Like, I would be on board with a late, a day 3 guy or a UDFA you brought into camp who worked his ass off or whatever. Like that seems to be the kind of guy that they're going to be able to make work, right? And like, I don't know that Jamal Williams physically in the way that he plays the game is the kind of thing that you can't go out there and find a replacement for. Like it's the mental and emotional stuff that I think is really adding a lot of value to him to this team. So physically, I think that you could probably find a guy to put into Ben Johnson's offense that's going to be able to, I don't know, maybe not do 17 touchdowns. That seems like a lot, but like be able to be as effective as a runner as Jamal Williams was. Yeah, I think you could probably find that.
I think free agency. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I mean, let me just flesh out my point on running backs just a little bit in terms of this consensus board. And I mean, it's early on in the process for all of these guys, but it's across 5 different places and they're major organizations, right? Pro Football Reference, the Draft Network, PFF, The Athletic, and Tankathon. They are major guys who don't do anything too crazy, and they kind of even each other out a little bit. Bijan is up there, average pick 7.4, like very high. And this is big boards, not predictive, but the
just
best player in the draft,
talent.
he's number 7. And then up there in day 2, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, Tank Bigsby, Kendre Miller, Devon Kane, Sean Tucker, and the back end of it, Israel Abakanda and Zach Evans. Those are your day 2 guys. Here are your day 3 guys. Just some selected names. Sorry, I said him in the back end of the day 2. Kenny McIntosh, Chase Brown, Tajay Spears, Deuce Vaughn, Mo Ibrahim. There was one other one to say, Eric Gray. They're all day 3 guys, according to the consensus board right now. Someone said in the chat they wanted Mo Ibrahim in day 2. Yeah. Well, he's the 253rd player on this consensus board. Like, that is almost Mr. Irrelevant. Right. So you've got people that people think are day 2 prospects all the way down there. Like,
oh, yeah.
I don't want to invest in someone high unless it's the best guy.
Sure. That makes complete sense to me. And I would agree that someone like McIntosh, Kendrell Bell from TCU, or an Ibrahim from Minnesota, like on a day 3, 6th, 7th round, something like that, completely fine. And that's where the Lions should be looking for that guy.
And that's all assuming Williams doesn't resign, or it does resign, right? If he doesn't resign, and we're sitting there with just Swift and Jamar Jefferson and the other Reynolds, I mean, do you take a guy like Bijan at 18, knowing that that's our room right now?
So no.
Still no?
So I wouldn't draft Bijan Robinson in the first round. End of sentence.
I'd consider it.
Not this year.
I'd consider it only because you look at what Kenneth Walker did coming into a team that was fit to do the things that he does well.
No, they drafted 2 tackles that completely overplayed like their draft position. Like they improved their line and then they threw the ball to run the ball. Kenneth Walker is a great running back. Congratulations for what you did against Michigan 2 years ago, you son of a bitch. But he is getting legitimate praise for what he did this season, but he would not have seen the field if like one of their dudes hadn't retired and the other guy that they had on the roster, when they drafted him, they had 2 other starting caliber running backs. One of them happened to go and one of them got hurt, and that's why he saw carries. And like, congratulations, like no one's ever going to be able to take that away from you. But like that, when they drafted him at what he did, they were not anticipating that he was going to be A, playing, and B, getting the level of workload that he did. So like, I think they drafted him.
He could do it. That's why they took him there.
No, but the difference between Kenneth Walker and like Kenny McIntosh, like behind the right line, is not so wildly variable that you need to in order to take a running back. And we've talked about this like literally ad nauseum, where it's like Saquon Barkley was drafted like 4 years ago, and he's still the 9th highest paid running back in the NFL because of where they took him. Like, you just don't need to invest, whether it's draft capital or money, in this position when you can find 85-90% of what those players are in the 6th or 7th round. And like I understand, like Bijan Robinson is probably the best running back prospect to come out since Saquon Barkley. And like I will give him that. And some team probably will draft him in the 1st round, but they are making a mistake. Unless it's a team that's like, we're a Super Bowl contender and we have the luxury of taking this pick or whatever, which the Lions are not. And next year when DeAndre Swift's contract's up, we can talk about taking a day 2 running back. That's fine to replace him or whatever. And then the room can be like that guy plus the guy that you took in the 6th round this year, plus your practice squad guys or whatever. But like, I am not going to invest in Bijan. Well, it's not my team, but like, I'm not going to invest in Bijan Robinson in the 1st round when they have just glaringly obvious needs in other positions. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Just to say, and this is the difference between 6 and 18. The 6th overall pick, his pay over 4 years will be $30.1 million over 4 years. Yeah. But at 18, it's half that, 15.5. That's $3.9 million a year. Now that is palatable for a top class running back for 4 years. So you have to get that, and you have to be a little bit lucky because running backs always get injured, which is one of the reasons why you don't want to pay them. But, and this is a point I hate making because it goes against everything I believe in, but I will make it because I think it is pertinent. The Lions have spent so much money on this offensive line, and we are not getting the most out of it because we do not have the personnel to do it, or at least on a consistent basis. Now, Swift has shown us what's possible, but he doesn't do it every game. He does it 3 games a year. Give me a running back that can do that 13 games a year. I'm not asking for him to do it every single game because it doesn't happen in real life. It's not Madden. But give me a guy that can do it more than half the games in the year. And if that means investing the 18th pick in a running back, then great, because it justifies the spending on that offensive line. Like, it keeps Goff safe, and that delivered the passing part of that. But the play action game, which was very effective this year, is enhanced by them worrying about the running game. And I don't think anyone should have been worried about our run game this year, really. Like, we ran the ball well, but it wasn't. No team was going, well, they're just going to run the ball all over us and they're not going to pass once and that'll be ball game. But that's what the Patriots did to us. And that's what the Eagles try to do to you. And that's what Tennessee tries to do to you in San Francisco. And you have to account for that. And that opens up the pass game necessarily. Whereas we did it in spite of that sometimes. So I hate saying what we've already done determines what we do now, but that is kind of how all of this does work in real life. You can't just say, in a vacuum, I take this player, because you aren't in a vacuum and you never are. So I do think the way we're set up does lend itself to trying to invest in the running back room more than the average team does.
Oh, I completely disagree. Like, to me, like, the fact that you have paid and drafted and invested in the way that you have in the offensive line means that you don't have to invest heavily in the running back position. In fact, I would invest even less in that position because
Bijan Robinson can do it.
Well, Bijan Robinson aside, right? Like, we're talking about the best running back prospect in the last 5 years to come out. But if you're just taking, like, say you took, what was the guys from the Steelers? Najee Harris. Say you took him at 20. That's relatively close to the 18th pick or whatever, and stuck him behind the Detroit Lions offensive line. Is he that much better than what Jamal Williams did? I don't think so. And
don't forget, if the scenario though is Jamal Williams doesn't come back, so we're not spending that $4 million on Jamal.
I can find Jamal Williams. I can find Jamal Williams in round 6. Yeah, you can. I mean, for how he's going to run the ball.
Yeah, but this guy's not Jamal Williams. He's
but I'm not talking about Bijan Robinson. I'm talking about a guy that I can take as a 6th-round pick and pay $985,000 a year. That might get 800 yards behind the offensive line, and then you still have DeAndre Swift, and you probably still bring in a bunch of UDFAs, or Ibrahim or whoever it is. Like, I mean, I think that those guys can make a big enough impact to have the offense still run exactly the way that it did this last year with Williams. You don't have to, the Detroit Lions have invested their draft capital very intelligently under Brad Holmes for the last 2 years. You don't have to fuck that up by going with a 1st-round running back.
Well, I would at least consider it personally, depending on all the stuff that happens in free agency and where the rest, who's available at 18 and what the first 17 picks do. I guess one of the questions I've got for Matt is pick 6. Wow, we said that a lot between Stafford and Goff. Anyway, pick number 6. Do we take it? Do we draft a player? Do we trade back? What are we doing here with pick 6? Do you think?
I think all of the options are on the table. If one of the quarterback needy teams doesn't come up, and the pick at 3 is available with Arizona, and the price is reasonable, and we can get Jalen Carter, I'm tempted. I really am tempted. If it doesn't cost too much, I hate giving up draft capital to move up. It's bad, but there's some prospects I don't want to miss. I think the most likely thing is that we do pick at 6. I really think that it's just what happens most of the time. But you see mock drafts thrown out there with trade downs where we pick up an extra 1 for 2024. If we couldn't pick up an extra 1 for 2024 and not move down too far, I'm for it. For selfish reasons, I want to go to the draft in Detroit and have 2 first-round picks. That'd be great. But also because I think it would just be a smart thing to do, especially if someone wants to come up. The most popular one right now is Carolina moving up to 6. Like it's 9 and a first next year for 6. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
Done.
That sounds great. Because there's almost no difference in quality between 6 and 9 this year. It's basically the same guy. So that would be great. Small trade down is great. If someone asked me to move all the way down into the mid-teens or late teens, I'm okay with it if the package is right. So I'm not worried about it. At the top of the draft, the quality is really good for the first 5 picks. And then it drops off.
And then we're at 6.
So naturally the Lions are at 6.
It sucks, but there we go. Yeah. I think we pick at 6 if I had to call it now.
Yeah, that seems most likely. So, well, Matt, I think we did it, buddy. Went a little bit long, so I know you're 5 hours ahead over there, so you probably got some like afternoon plans or something you got to take care of. Girlfriend wants to spend some time.
I've just bought 400 nails, and I've got some wood that needs hammering. So
I got you.
What
Been
fun!
there myself.
It's I don't know what temperature in Fahrenheit it is, but it's almost freezing here. 3 degrees Celsius in. Let's find out what Google says.
38.
37. So it's toasty over here. So I'm going to have a fun afternoon. I hope you guys do as well. But thank you for having me on again. It's been really great to talk to you.
Yeah, the quick math on Celsius to Fahrenheit is double the Celsius, add 32. And it's going to be really close. So double it to 6, add 32 is 38. It's going to be really close to that. Just
fantastic. Thank you for that.
You come to the football and you learn how to do some quick math on Celsius to Fahrenheit conversions.
Matt, we'll have to have you back before the draft to get your thoughts. So it's going to be fun. Maybe we can do a mock draft together or something.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you guys in the chat. We really appreciate you. And for Mike for setting this whole thing up. And we will be back on Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern. Come by, share your thoughts.
With the hat. We get to talk about which hat he's going to get.
Yeah, there's a clear front runner.
There was one that was big, and then some other hats kind of came back. 30
people have voted, which is unbelievably shocking to me.
I can't wait to see what it is.
Oh yeah, I got to pick the option, so I'm not going to have to wear something I wouldn't be proud to see it, in public or whatever. So, but yeah, it's going to be fun. So, well, thanks, Don.
All right, we'll see you guys.
See you guys. Peace.
See ya.